going on, guys? We're back with another RAFA build. This one's a bit gimmicky, but it's genuinely really strong and doesn't need overdrive to do damage. This build is entirely centered around buffing and spamming our slippy grenades to kill everything. And if you've ever used it, you know that it deals melee and ordnance damage, and because of this we can do a lot of silly things with it that make it really strong. So to start off, we grab Peacebreaker Cannons. It's the only action skill that we're able to use in combat that allows us to throw our grenades. So this is our only choice for overdrive. We then go Expedite for movement speed, which helps us get around the map quicker and helps us avoid our own damage, as the floor will be covered in grenades that deal splash damage to us. We then get Handshake Deal, which is more melee damage. Even that gun damage ends up applying to our melee damage through our specializations, so another small bonus there. Dial In allows us to basically always guaranteed crit combined with our other crit chance sources, so it's like really huge for our damage in general, as well as survivability with Saudar, which is based on damage dealt, and we're dealing tons of damage, so this is always triggering since our crits are guaranteed and we're dealing tons of damage. Diamond Hands, half of this bonus applies to our melee due to our specialization, and while the cannons do eat these stacks, we're dealing so many instances of melee damage that this is basically close to full stacks at all times during bossing and mobbing, so it is a massive bonus that we have. We then get Collaborate Ignition, which applies the element of our gun to all of our damage sources, and it's also skill damage, so if you have any way to boost skill damage, it will just boost your damage overall. Huge bonus element for our grenades. Artilleria helps us spam them more with the cooldown rate. You can mess around with the points here. I found 4 out of 5 is just enough, but 5 out of 5 might be more comfortable for you, or if you have a 3 charge Slippy, you can probably get away with less points in here. Synergia, same song and dance as Diamond Hands, more melee damage, and the gun damage ends up applying to our melee damage through our specialization. Immolations, mainly for bossing, just to spam away while our overdrive is active. Currently the skill is like kind of weird in that it doesn't always reset the health cost when your ordnance cools down, so you want to be careful with spamming it during like mobbing combat, as it will kill you. It's not the worst thing in the world, as going down does reset your ordnance cooldown, so if your ordnance were on cooldown as you went down, it would basically refresh them, so it kind of balances itself out. We get El Diablito, which is bonus fire damage, bonus ordnance fire damage, sorry, when we're dealing fire damage. Super useful against flesh type enemies and bosses like Inceptus. Now you have to be dealing fire damage, so you would swap to a fire element weapon to apply Collaborating Ignition as fire damage to your Slippy to trigger this. We then go El Paraguas, which is boosting our splash damage. Now the splash damage only applies to the actual impact of the Slippy and not the bonus element damage that we're dealing with it. So keep that in mind. The splash damage critical chance is also very nice here. It just ensures we're guaranteeing critting constantly with our Slippies. Shock Market, we deal an additional bonus element at shock damage. This is huge for elemental coverage. Shock is typically the weakest health type on enemies, so having this and then using just about any other element gun you want will ensure better elemental coverage in general. We also get an additional one from Confetti in the Red Tree with our primary class mod, which is the Grenazerker, which will give you points in Confetti as well. The alternative spec would be to take 10 points out of the green tree. We can mess around with the distribution with Handshake Deal, Shock Market, and other skills like Synergia, and we would put them into blue tree to get down to Ariba, which gives us better cooldown during mobbing, but not during bossing. So if that's more comfortable, it's certainly an option you can take. For the first row, pick either rinse or the thrill based on the choice of weapons you're using. As for the guns, we have a few choices here. We can use Maliwan weapons with the switch element part, or just any weapon that has that part, mainly for elemental coverage for our grenades. Shock, fire, and corrosive are like the main ones you want for most content, but that's why we would use a Maliwan weapon. Meteors are the best option you have here, as they work best with this build and are great for dealing with flying targets or like really fast moving targets, as some TDRs can home in, as well as getting a second wins because of that. So definitely try to use TDRs if you can. You can go with any really strong like weapon. The Hot Slugger, the Wombo Combo are some options you can go with for second wins and whatnot. Just tailor your enhancement towards them, as there isn't much we can do with actual enhancement effects or passives that can boost our Slippy Grenade. As for the rest of the gear, we use the Bypass just to cycle our action skill the quickest with Caffeine Specialization. You can go with an Enrage here for the highest damage potential. Damage reduction and movement speed are also decent options that you can go with. And you can also get some decent damage if you're using the Bullet Train Specialization with one that has movement speed. The Slippy obviously is the star of the show. You don't need any specific one. This one I just kind of pulled out of my bank, and it just happened to have the 25% chance to deal critical damage. You probably want additional charge on this, so 3 charges or less cooldown duration. But just about any Slippy will work, and you can tailor your skill point distribution based on which one you have. Our primary class mod is the Grenazerker, as mentioned before. You want as many points into Confetti as you can, or honestly anything works that isn't a Bajo, which is the skill that gives you action skill cooldown in the blue tree. You don't really want this, but Ariba or the other 2 skills are perfectly okay for this setup. Confetti I recommend strongly just because you can get an additional bonus element for your weapon, but more cooldown on kill is nice for mobbing if that's what you prefer. Any bonuses that boost your Slippy damage will be nice here. Gun damage is like fixed on this, I'm pretty sure. So things like kinetic damage or melee damage or like anything else that'll boost your Slippy will be nice as a passive here. Our shield is the What's for Dinner once again. Unfortunately, the Slippy does not benefit from the melee damage bonus from the heavyweight shield. It will trigger the effect, but it does not get the melee damage, similar to how Amon's axes trigger the effect but don't actually get the melee damage bonus, which is kind of sad. But the What's for Dinner just kind of works with most things, as the bonus shock damage will apply to our Slippies. Siphon is huge here if you can get that, but you're typically dealing tons of damage where the floor will be covered in boosters anyways, so you'll basically always have this up. Great for bossing as well. You can also swap to the Protean Cell if you want to for bossing for higher damage potential, but it's not needed if you're not comfortable with like slamming to trigger the effect. The What's for Dinner will do just fine. Fireworks is great for flying targets if that's more your speed. It just kind of works with most builds. The effect is just really strong. You can also use the Timekeeper's New Shield as a more defensive option. You have enough damage already that this isn't a bad choice, especially if you find yourself downing yourself a lot from Hemolitions. The damage reduction will reduce the damage taken from that, and it's just a solid defensive choice if you want to use that. Our enhancement, as mentioned before, tailor it towards the weapon of choice you're using. I don't have a lot of great TDR enhancements. This is the best one I had, but the banger effect is pretty good, as it's just a really good boost to your overall damage. Gun damage here on enhancement multiplies with your regular gun damage bonuses, and we have a lot of gun damage bonuses that will multiply with this. Splash radius isn't that good, but it's there. I'm mainly using it for the firmware, which we'll get into in a second, but gun type damage is also good. Reload speed, magazine size would be huge for TDR specifically, but just tailor your enhancement towards what type of weapons you're using and you'll be good to go. For enhancements, we have a few options. We go with Gadget Ahoy Tier 2 for the ordnance damage primarily. You could go Tier 3 here, but I wouldn't recommend it, as splash radius from things like Get Thrown Tier 2 and Tier 1 of Airstrike are much better for both bossing and mobbing, as with enough radius, your slippies are able to actually hit most flying targets, and the on kill bonus is just not that meaningful since we're already buffing the hell out. We're super buffing our slippies, so this bonus is very small, but it is an option. Tier 3 of Get Thrown and Airstrike you could use if you want, but I found their effects to be pretty insignificant in combat. As for specializations, we go with Full Spectrum Arsenal, as half of all of our gun damage bonuses apply to our melee damage. This is huge because we have tons of gun damage through skills like Diamond Hands and Synergia most notably. We go with Fragmentation Payload, mainly for the critical hit damage, as it's properly applying critical hit damage to our Slippy grenades. The crit chance is nice, but this is mainly for the critical hit damage since there isn't a lot of other ways to get proper critical damage boosts on our Slippy grenades. We then go with Now with Caffeine, mainly for action skill cooldown during mobbing. It's just the easiest way to cycle your action skill, and we don't really have anything else to do it with. If we're in a bossing stage, we would swap to Bullet Train, which ends up applying even more gun damage to our Slippy grenade as we're moving. So that is netting us even more damage through skills like Fragmentation Payload as well as Bare Arms. And that's pretty much the build in a nutshell. I wanted to get this one out as quick as possible, so there's probably some optimization to be done, but I felt it was in a good enough state to share with you guys. And yeah, if you enjoyed, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.